you all know, this will be live streaming very soon. You can kind of walk
Good morning. If everybody would take a seat, please. Feel free to sit when you want to. To the men and women who have served this great country and to our guests, I'm honored to welcome you on behalf of DeWitt Public Schools. I'm proud to say that this is our 16th annual Veterans Day program in our district. Several of you have been loyal attendees, while some of you are new to today. I'm certain that you will find that today will remind you of how we at DeWitt Public Schools make it a priority to recognize November 11th in a special way. Some of you are here because of a flyer that you saw somewhere out in our community. And some of you are here because your children, nieces and nephews, perhaps grandchildren, may attend our school. Some of you are here because you've received a personal phone call from one of our students, while some saw our announcement on social media post. Please know that we do our best to reach everyone in some way or form, and all are welcome. Today's program is themed Telling Your Story. We all know that you carry stories about your service. Your narratives are filled with sentimental and heartfelt testimony to your noble service of our country. We can only read what has been published about these narratives, or we can be witnesses to hearing them when we have a unique opportunity to do so. We also respect that some stories simply cannot be told. We know that in some cases there are no words fitting for one's time serving our great country. This program offers somewhat of a context for these stories, told or untold, as we try to create a time when we can salute our storytellers. It is important to know that this program was started with a vision from now retired DeWitt Public Schools social studies teacher, Chris Klein. Chris, along with Mike Wright, then teacher and now athletic director for our district, and myself, all work together to make this program not only an annual event, but a tradition for our students, staff, and community. Along the way, we have picked up some significant helping hands to help us plan the growing program. Renee Sheridan, now retired media center specialist of our building, faithfully jumped in to help with several of our details in making the red, white, and blue more vibrant in our decorations and planning. Additionally, Deb Kirchen, community member and local business owner, along with her family, the Thompsons and the Reeses, have always had a hand in the background with a large helping hand in the program. They are here faithfully to contribute with their generous donation of the coffee we serve at this event. We've also been blessed with the support of some of our local area businesses. Over the years, we've had Bridge Street Real Estate, the DeWitt Memorial Association, Howe's Greenhouse right up the street, just to mention a few. Needless to say, receiving the support of our community is greatly appreciated and makes this program possible. Each day when I walk through this gymnasium, or when I attend an athletic event here, I admire the red, white, and blue of this beautiful flag. It always reminds me of how America is founded on freedom, justice, and liberty for all. The flag is made possible, in case you don't know, when Mike Wright pursued his vision to have one the size that it is, serving as the beautiful backdrop to our athletic and non-athletic events in this very facility. Mike worked with the DeWitt American Legion Post 379, and today we all benefit from this work. As our students look at its vibrant colors, they too are reminded that these principles are never free. Our nation's soldiers serve every day to protect our country and its ideals. We must never forget nor take for granted the duty and sacrifice of our men and women in uniform and their families. Let us now honor America and the men and women in uniform who so bravely serve with the singing of the national anthem, performed this morning by the DeWitt High School Chamber Choir, directed by Megan Eldred. Everyone, if you can, please stand. Place your right hand on your heart as we together recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated. At this time, I would like to introduce to you the DeWitt Public Schools Superintendent, Dr. Shauna Spitter.
Thank you, and welcome to the 16th Annual Veterans Day Ceremony. With the theme of telling our story, I thought about my own story. My dad was very proud about serving in the Army, and I would hear stories about him being stationed in Germany, how it was to cook for an army, and he still cooks for an army. But there have been 3 events that have really shaped my life and my lens and how I view the world, these 3 military events. The first was in 1990 with the Gulf War. I was a high school junior, senior, and the first time I had this sense of fear of what the future would look like. Then in 2007, my husband was deployed to Afghanistan. So 2007, 2010, and 2020 were deployments to where for the first time I feared for my husband, but also feared for my children and what they were going through. Especially in 2005 to where my son being a emotional. A preschooler didn't understand where his father was. But in 2021, last year, the last 20 years of my life with the military came to this sense of pride and honor when I had the opportunity to pin my husband as colonel. The love that he has for his country and the service that he has put into his career has given me a better understanding and appreciation. But through these events, I have really gained a better understanding and gratitude for the service members and the service that you have had, but also the families behind you supporting the service that you give. So thank you for all that you do. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Mrs. Perez again. She has been putting on such a beautiful event, but surrounded by students and staff. We also have several board members here and sponsors who have made this event possible. But most importantly, thank you and your families for all that you have done.
Thank you. At this point in our program, we have several students from our student body, some specifically representing Business Professionals of America organization, our student government, and our National Honor Society. They will now serve you all a continental breakfast and coffee. The breakfast was made possible by co-sponsors, the DeWitt Memorial Association and the David C. Lynch Trust. The DeWitt Memorial Association, for those of you who do not know, is a non-profit organization that owns and operates the DeWitt Memorial Building. The association is governed by a volunteer board of directors, and they host the annual Ox Roast. Their donation shows a true commitment to the patriotic spirit of their community and to its veterans. David C. Lynch proudly served the United States Navy on the USS Robert H. McCarty. He faithfully attended this event each year and might have met several of you over the years. He held this program very dear to his heart. He especially enjoyed spending his morning with the men and women who shared the same sense of patriotism as he did. He was my dad. David Lynch passed away at the age of 85 in August of 2021. It was the wish of my family to contribute to this program in some very way where he could continue to honor those who serve on this day. Additionally, DeWitt's own Hippie Coffee is providing us with the hot coffee that we are drinking. We're grateful for this continuous generosity of our community, which makes this program what it is today. So I'd like you to please sit back, relax, feel free to move around, enjoy the company. We have a lot of hands to shake, lots of gratitude to spread. We will begin the second half of the program in approximately 30-40 minutes. We'll watch the clock. I will give about a 5-minute warning. There are restrooms across the hall, and we will start back up at that point. Thank you. a minute to now introduce you to Ruth Ann Bennett here on the side, who comes to us with a special presentation for some of our veterans. Please welcome to the podium Ruth Ann Bennett, who will now explain the United States of America Vietnam War commemoration. Ruth Ann.
I wasn't real patriotic when I was younger, and then when my son and my grandchildren have gone into service, I've gotten a little more patriotic and realizing more stuff as I've grown up. I started out with doing quilts for Quilts of Valley. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of those, but I've gone to San Antonio and Camp Lejeune, North Carolina to award quilts to vets. And in my travels, I found that the Vietnam vets have gotten kind of slighted on the way they were treated when they came home. A lot of them couldn't wear uniforms, some that did got spit on. So my heart has been really going out to the Vietnam vets. In the beginning of this year, the Quilts of Valor program and newsletter talked about the Vietnam lapel pins, and that we wanted to get as many of these lapel pins to the vets as we could. And it's anybody between November 55 to May of 75, Vietnam and Vietnam era vets. So today, I'd like to award anybody who has not already gotten a Vietnam pin and has served between those dates. Plus, there's a fact sheet that tells about the pin, so you'll know what it means. There's also a proclamation in what you're going to get that's a real nice writing and gives you guys the credit for the service that you rendered. And I just want to read a little piece of this. I am here today to honor and give thanks to a generation of proud Americans who saw our country through one of the most challenging missions we have ever faced. While no words will ever be fully worthy of their service, nor any honor truly befitting their sacrifice, let us remember that it is never too late to pay tribute to the men and women who answered the call of duty with courage and valor. Let us strive to live up to their example by showing our Vietnam vets, their families, and all who have served the fullest respect and support of a grateful nation. So if any of you Vietnam era vets are here and you have not gotten your Vietnam lapel pin, if you'd stand up, the students are going to come around and they're going to give you your pin and this fact sheet. There's only one. One more thing. Welcome all, and thank you for your grateful mission.
Thank you, Ruth Ann. Now we will again have the DeWitt Chamber Choir perform. They're going to sing America the Beautiful, directed by Megan Elder and accompanied by John Dale Smith.
Majesties above.
to our keynote speaker for this morning. Since our program's theme is telling your story, I believe that there is no one more fitting of this role than our keynote speaker today. Mr. Lance Aldrich is a history teacher of 24 years here in DeWitt. During this time, he teaches and has taught AP history, modern military history, and military history of the 1800s. Lance Aldrich graduated from Michigan State University, as well as has earned a master's degree in curriculum and teaching. In 2006, he graduated from a United States Marine Corps Educators Workshop in San Diego. He is a proud family man. He has 2 children right here in our building, Aiden, a junior, and Anya, a freshman. He is married to his lovely wife, Melissa. If you know Lance, you will learn that he exudes a deep sense of passion for our military. And speaking to him, you might learn of his extensive collection of military materials, relics, historical gear. There was even a rumor at one point that he owned a tank. Although not true, he does own military vehicles. Something that I'm happy to mention is that he has recently been contacted by the DeWitt High School Marine Corps recruiter who said that students had told him firsthand when they asked them who the biggest supporter of the military was in the high school, according to the students, it was Lance Aldrich. So today we will hear how Mr. Aldrich tells your story in his classroom. It is my honor and privilege to welcome my colleague, my friend, my role model for all of us here at DeWitt. Please extend a warm welcome to Lance Aldrich.
Kind words. I'm going to be using that screen up there so that everybody knows. I hope that you can see it and that it doesn't fail us in terms of technology. There we go. Okay. Thank you for those kind words, Stephanie. I don't hear those often. It's kind of awkward, but it makes you feel good. That's for sure. Well, if you look at the screen over there, you can see what I would call the educational front line, and that's where all of these stories thus far that we've heard today actually unfold. Good old Room 104 from my perspective. On topic today was the Battle of Borodino, first block, about this little guy named Napoleon and his counterpart, the one-eyed general that killed Tutsov from Russia. That's my desk. I don't tell kids it's a desk. I call it the command center. It's a far drive from the old one-room schoolhouse. And with that, every day I go to battle fighting the influences of the social media world. And it is definitely getting more difficult. But one thing that always gives the social media world a run for its money will be your stories. And a good story will definitely pull kids off of those and bring them back to what is most important. And that is what we actually do. Maybe not necessarily the rumors that are abuzz on social media or the other information that really isn't quite as important as what you've done and what you did. The real war, according to Walt Whitman, will never get into the books. And of course, he said this during the Civil War, and that's been a guiding mission of mine over 2 decades, to try to put the reality into war. And while it's not always possible, I know I really strive to do that because I think we're better off knowing what you did and what you do for us. It makes kids appreciate what they have and ultimately what they will get, hopefully, in their futures. With that, I first want to thank you. I am tremendously exuding humility. I was very nervous last night about what I would say, and I've gone over this about 100 times, and hopefully that's enough. Of course, today is full of emotion. It is a daily experience, all that life has to offer. We're going to cry, I've already seen it. We're going to laugh, I've already heard it. We're going to smile, and hopefully as we part ways, we go forward, hopeful for a brighter future. I'd like to say, to begin, that your stories matter. What you do, what you've done, it echoes across generations, and in many respects, it carries on into eternity, I think well beyond your lifetime. I invite you to look at this list real briefly, and just see if you can make any connection with any of the terms that are on the list. And I want you to recognize that if you can or if you can't, it doesn't really make much difference. This isn't a test, this isn't a quiz. But all of these things on this list, as I was thinking about this, represent my childhood vocabulary. They are the words, the phrases that I heard as a young person, and in turn have led to me being here where I am today. And certainly by the age of 10, I think I had taken all of these to heart. I had assaulted every position playing army. I had countered every enemy. I had won every medal. I had died several times, and amazingly I had survived, and I'm willing to tell about it. Of course, that childhood fascination over time, much because of your stories, turned into adult admiration, and that is what I hope to convey today. So, I am proof that what you did echoes across generations. I would not be here if it were not for veterans in my family. So how did I get here? I think it's important for me as a history teacher to let you know that when the topic is you, I describe you as the warrior class to the kids at DeWitt High School, that you are our protectors. There's nobody else who's tougher or was tougher when you were in your prime. I know many of you don't necessarily look like you did when you were active in the military, but at one point in your life, you represented the most that America had to offer, the toughest people in the world. With that, I also thought about my own family. This happens to be my great-great-uncle, Ellsworth Max Bunnell. He fought in the United States Marine Corps during World War I. He unfortunately contracted the Spanish flu. His unit rotated back to the States as the fighting was winding down, and ultimately he was too sick to move, and he died in Europe. He had a sister, my great-grandmother, Grace Aldrich. She had 4 sons who participated in World War II. She was a 4-star Blue Mother. And one of her sons, Max Aldrich, my grandfather, of course bears his name. One of his brothers, Ellsworth, bears another of the World War I veterans' names. And what really was stunning to me was I only found this out last year. I think many of our stories are very difficult to hear, but nonetheless they need to be heard, because this day means so much more to me now that I know that I have this more deep connection to this event, the events that sometimes seem to have occurred a long time ago. My dad's name is Gordon Max Aldrich. Of course, he carried on the legacy of his father. My name is Lance Gordon Aldrich, and I carry on to a degree the legacies of all of them. What a challenge it is. For me, teaching is not about my story. I was not a veteran, let's be crystal clear. It's about their stories, and it's about your stories. And one of the greatest challenges teaching social studies today in a world that is constantly distracted by social media is getting kids to embrace the past, to put on hold everything that's in the present, and there's no shortage of things, and to remember those who came before they did. One of the ways that I try to reiterate this with my students, besides just telling them, put their phone down, although I don't have to do that too often, is I tell them that they must remember where they've been, so they know where they are, and ultimately they know where they're going. And I want to use that framework to continue just a little bit more about today's special significance. How did we get here? As a history teacher, I see the value in history. I know that sometimes Veterans Day is mixed up with Memorial Day, but I am crystal clear in terms of knowing the difference. But it is important that we recognize those people who are not here today. So we have to go back 104 years ago to this very day, November 11th, 1918. Right, a day that would carry on until 1954 as Armistice Day, and then at that point, because so many other veterans were in need of recognition, it became, well, what we recognize today, Veterans Day. 4 years prior, in 1914, the world had entered into one of the most brutal conflicts the world had known up to that point. The French and the British armies were suffering dearly. The British alone, July 1st, would lose 57,460 soldiers in one day. It's almost impossible to comprehend. For America, it was a latecomer in that contest. We would suffer one of our greatest military losses of life as well during the Meuse-Argonne offensive, suffering over 27,000 fatalities in that event near the end of the war. And tragically, the war on this day, 104 years ago, was actually affecting people right up until the very last moment. A very young private named Henry Gunther, at 10:45, decided that he would charge a German machine gun position, and in so doing, against the urges of his superiors, he was sprayed with machine gun fire, and one of those bullets found their way to him. And ultimately, he died at 10:59, with 1 minute remaining in the war. And he became the last American soldier to die in a war that was supposed to end all wars. And thus at 11 a.m., remember that today, that war came to an end. There are thousands of Americans in the Meuse-Argonne Cemetery, as well as others, that are no doubt very important and special and should be a part of today and afford them, we should, some recognition, but of course they're not with us. And that is an actual picture from the Meuse-Argonne Cemetery taken just a few days ago. To those World War I veterans who managed to survive, felt a very painful responsibility of remembering, of carrying on the memories of those who could no longer speak. Decades after the war, many great war veterans spoke about their experiences, but not all, because it was too painful, it was too difficult. Eventually, many of these stories would come out and we would learn a lot. And then one day, there were no more stories. Frank Buckles was the last surviving American World War I veteran. He died in 2011 at the age of 110. He was an ambulance driver, if you can imagine him on the left there. And one of the things that he said about his experience, this is him speaking, quote, "There was never a shortage of broken bodies that needed to be taken back to the hospital. The memory of those guys and their stories was difficult to bear in the years afterwards, but I felt it my duty to tell their stories. Thus today as never before, I think everybody in attendance should pledge to remember, whether we are non-veterans or veterans, the stories that give meaning to the peace that the world experienced and was ushered in by the Great War at exactly 11 a.m. 104 years ago, this very day." So where are we today? Near the end of Frank Buckles' life, he was living in a nursing home outside of the public eye, but as the last surviving World War I veteran, he was regularly visited by people that he said didn't really get it. In one of those visits, he was visited by a young 5th grade class. And one of those 5th graders was Andrew Biggio. Years later, Andrew would join the Marine Corps and ended up serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. And you can see him there on the right. He survives, he comes back home, and that's when he begins to suffer some post-deployment difficulties. Why did I survive? Why me? What's my purpose? Probably something that many of you veterans have experienced that we just can't relate to, but we can sympathize with. So he didn't really know what to do. He was wandering. So he decided he was going to buy a rifle. And that rifle that he purchased was an M1 Garand rifle. I'll bet you there's a lot of people in this gym that recognize what that weapon is. General Patton said the weapon that won World War II. Well, he took it home and he showed it to his immediate family. They didn't really react. What he got in terms of emotional reaction was nothing. But there was an old World War II vet that was living next to him, and he took the rifle over to him, and he put it in his hands. And it released a flood of emotions that made that old World War II vet appear to be a young, scrappy Marine that was assaulting the hills of Iwo Jima and countless other positions as they would have in World War II within the Pacific Theater. And Andrew was amazed at what he had experienced as their conversations went on and how they were able to relate to each other. This old guy that probably should have been in a wheelchair, but just was determined, like the Marines are, to win the day, and ultimately refused to be put into one. In the end, Andrew leaves that, and he formulates a mission And that mission is that he's going to go out and he's going to contact every Marine that he can, and he's going to try to get them to share their story with him, and he's going to record it because he's armed with a cell phone, and the old that wasn't. And as he travels around and he gathers the stories, the next step that he takes, sort of, in many respects, becomes the one that many of us recognize in the social media world. As veterans sign it, he sees a recurring theme. They are very positively affected. It brings a smile to their face. Power of the rifle, something that we think of being a symbol of destruction, is redefined, and it becomes a symbol of recovery. It becomes a symbol of relating to one another, knowing that we have vastly different experiences, and it becomes a symbol of going forward. With that, the power of the rifle is very important, not only to Andrew as a recent veteran of Iraq and Afghanistan, but also to everybody from World War II, and for those that read it, everybody in between as well. The book turned, the rifle has turned into the book, and presently it has over 200 signatures. There's actually social media sites devoted to tracking the rifle. He still has it. He's going to give it to a museum. He doesn't know which museum he's going to give it to, but he does plan to give it to a museum. And it's not just going to be a rifle. It's going to be a symbol of the stories that were told. And he's documented those stories. And for those that read the book, especially young people, it's going to make what you did come to life. It's going to make what you did much more important and much more dramatic. And that's what you need to confront the social media world. You need to capture people's attention. Well, it just so happens that one of the few pictures that I have of my grandfather from the Second World War is of him carrying his M1 Garand rifle. When I first received the picture, as Mrs. Perez said, I was longing to make some sort of a connection. And I believed that the material objects would formulate that connection. So I said, I wanted everything in that picture. It was quite expensive. And the first thing I bought was the M1 Garand rifle. And I remember getting it in Ohio, and I held it. I thought, man, this is what he felt like. This is what he did. But in the end, it didn't do what I thought it was going to do. It was just an object. I needed more. I needed a story. And although I haven't necessarily found everything that he did, I am currently still investigating that. I did read Andrew's book, and I have it here. Maybe some of you have read it as well. In the book, with these stories that are in it, some which are very funny, some which are very scary, some almost hard to believe, right? They give purpose not only to what is currently being done, but what has been done. And it allows non-veterans to connect to veterans in a way that I think improves everybody's lives and the quality of life, because we know that veterans bear the burden of many things beyond just what they may have experienced when they were in uniform. And people need to know that. I recently read an article about the World War II veteran population passing away at astonishing rates, and I don't even want to recount how many are passing away on a daily basis, oftentimes out of the limelight in nursing homes. And sadly, many of us over time will probably witness the passing of the last World War II veteran, similar to when Frank Buckles passed away. With that in mind, the book allows you to connect with some of these people before they perhaps pass on and ultimately leave our lives. This year, giving some shout outs, we lost the last surviving World War II Medal of Honor recipient. Herschel Woody Williams, I'm sure many of you know who he is, passed away. And in June, at the 71st commemoration of the Battle of Midway, where the Spartans are going to be playing the USS Midway, now the USS Abraham Lincoln, there were only 13 veterans who participated in the battle who were actually in attendance. For Andrew, the individual who wrote the book, the Iraq-Afghanistan veteran, the biggest challenge when he took on the task of writing the book was getting these stories. It was a race against time. And near the end of the book, the last chapter, he revisits that 5th grade field trip that he took when he had the opportunity to talk to Frank Buckles, the last World War I veteran, and he chose not to. And it haunted him because he knew what warfare was like, he knew what he had gone through, and he longed for people to talk to him. And steer clear of the solitude that sometimes confronted my grandfather, who chose to never talk about it. For us non-veterans today, we must learn from Andrew. We must learn from these veterans. We must take every opportunity to listen. Put your phones down. These are fine people. For one day, it's going to be the last Korean War veteran. And then it's going to be the last Vietnam veteran. And then eventually, it's going to be all the others. You don't want to lose the opportunity. I think today when we run across these people, and this is for us that are non-veterans, it's going to start with a thank you. Just go up and say thank you. If it feels awkward, just say it. A handshake, a fist bump, a pat on the back, a hug, a nod of appreciation, and in the end, commit yourself to remembering what they did for you if they tell you what they did, so that we can enjoy the lives that we have today and go forward hopeful for a better future. With that in mind, where are we going? Well, current events around the world remind us that peace is not guaranteed. While we are justifiably proud of our past today, we will pay tribute to the remarkable warriors who came before us. We must understand that the stories of yesterday cannot secure the freedoms of tomorrow. I saw in the news a story about the armed forces and the recruiting struggle that they are currently engaged in. In fact, the story, the person that was speaking for the military described it as a crisis. They can't fill the ranks of the U.S. Armed Forces in many areas of the country. The spokesperson for the Armed Forces said it has to do with the story. That the story that the military has relied upon since 9/11 has stopped working, and that they need to change their story. And that if they don't change their story fast, then they're going to have increasing difficulties. I don't know exactly how the military, the Armed Forces, is going to change their story. I think that task is going to be very difficult, and some of the toughest people will be charged with figuring that out. But I do know one thing for sure. If they don't include the legacies of you veterans in here, your memories, your stories, and whatever they come up with, then they've already lost. This great nation has gotten to where it is today because of your selfless sacrifice. And if it's going to go forward, it must be a part of any story that is going to be told. In closing today, I want to revisit a rather dramatic moment in American military history. I want to go back to when General Douglas MacArthur decided he was going to leave the military. He gave a very significant speech, very high-profile speech. And ultimately, Douglas MacArthur said that old soldiers never die. They just fade away. And now I close my military career and just fade away. And with that, he walked off. Well, I really think the old general got it wrong. And thank goodness that he's not here to hear me say that, because if you know MacArthur, he would never have admitted to being wrong. We don't want you to fade away. We can't have you as a nation fade away. We want you to continue to remember, as difficult as it may be, we want you to tell your stories, being forever and always the warriors that you were and the warriors that you are. I want you to know that we know who you are. We know what you did for us, and we are forever grateful. And we go to great strides in this school to carry on your stories. Thank you very much for everything that you've done.
Wow, thank you so much for that. Let us pause for a moment of silence to honor all those who have served this great nation by paying the ultimate sacrifice. This will be followed by the playing of taps performed by DeWitt Middle School Band Director Christopher Pike. Now we will have a performance by John Dale Smith, who will play Salute to the Armed Forces. Maybe you know this. This will immediately be followed by the DeWitt High School Chamber Choir, who will perform Song for the Unsung Hero. Please feel free to stand and honor your military branch as the song is played. appreciate you taking the time to come here and share this very special event. Most importantly, it's a program that would not be possible without the support of our DeWitt Public Schools community. I would like to recognize again the DeWitt Memorial Association, who is co-sponsor for this year's program. And if it weren't for our continued support of Big B Coffee and the Kirchen family, we just could not do this. I definitely want to give a special mention to a few people. Dr. Spicker, our administration, and our school board, thank you so much for continual support in this program. It means a lot to carry on the tradition. Our students, we've had some photographers here today, took the time out of their schedules, and Sarah Collin and Claire McIntyre. They come here today to capture the moment. House Greenhouse has been so cooperative and generous in donating some floral arrangements, as you can see in front of the podium. Deb Kirchen has put a lot of time in this on her own, out of her own calendar, and her daughter April to come and help make the details come together. The students and many of the staff here, we've got the kids in the back, and give them a round of applause for their continued help to make the breakfast possible. We have a couple of staff members helping along the way. We had some business teacher, Megan Volkman, for her design of our program that sits on your table. Lisa Norman in the Graphic Arts Department has created the flyer we used on our media, on the website, and we used it on social media. Adam Zarzinski in the Tech Department, give him a hand, everyone's making all this tech possible. And here we have a team who comes here to set all of this up late at night. And of course, Megan Aldridge, John Bill Smith, and the Chief Choir who have sung so beautifully. Christopher White is now over from the middle school to give our beautiful performance of text. So Lance Aldridge, who took the time out of his very busy schedule of being a soccer dad, a busy teacher, and a family man, to prepare this presentation and speech today. It was a wonderful presentation. And lastly, to the others in our district who have all helped in some way to make this possible. I may not get everybody, and I apologize for that, but it is truly the efforts of everybody, and we do appreciate you coming every year. We try to change it up every year. We try to reach out to you. We do our best with our registration table. If you put your name and number there, we will get our kids to make a phone call to you personally next year for our next year's event. So, with that being said, veterans, we definitely here at DeWitt Public Schools and our community salute you. The brave men and the women who have sacrificed so much for our freedom. And we know that the freedoms that we have and exercise are not free. Words cannot express the gratitude that we feel for your attendance with us here today, but more importantly, we thank you for your dedication, your sacrifice, and your service to our country. Have a great day, everybody.